Disclaimer. We are not medical professionals or specialists. This is merely a conversation of our opinions. We are not contradicting anyone's personal views or values. This is our conversation. Topics such as suicide and abuse may also be discussed. Viewers' discretion is advised.
Hey Stigma Busters, welcome to our third episode of the Living Beyond the Horizon podcast, Posh Mentality.
So how are we today?
I'm doing good, aside from the essay I have to write this morning.
Yeah, I think I was kind of off this week, but I'm kind of getting that just back as, I'm just being a little more patient with myself rather than like punishing myself every second. So yeah, what about you, Zoe?
I'm doing good, just a little anxious of my presentation in 2 weeks, but I'm good.
Good luck on that.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, if you remember from our second episode of Posh Mentality, we talked about the biopsychosocial aspect of mental health. So for today, we're going to dig deeper into the bio part, the biological aspect of mental health.
Yeah, so I think the biological aspect is often overlooked. Like I find myself paying so much attention to like my relationships, my schoolwork. I kind of forget that like a lot of the things I'm doing is actually affecting my brain. So I think one of the main ones I associate it with is procrastination. So just like in terms of evolution and the way we've been involved and how it really affects how we work as well. So procrastination comes from negative emotions, right? Negative emotions that are correlated with a specific task. And because of this emotion, we often drive away from this, right? And this is because of our anxiety. And I think one of the big things is that our brain was evolved to not thrive, but to merely survive. So that's why when something comes up and it gives us anxiety to think of like something in the long term, it's often really hard to get to that task. So I think that's one of the main ones I correlate to, but there are some that I've never actually like witnessed before. Like for example, like someone with an anxiety disorder might show up problems with the gut, diarrhea, and sweating. And then some drugs can also trigger disorders, right? Like what we consume can also definitely affect the brain as well. And then, yeah.
And then going off from what you said about the survival sort of thing our brain goes into, there's a part of our brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is triggered when we encounter situations where our brain will deem it as dangerous. Or it may not necessarily be dangerous, but we have a bad memory from that we associate with that event or that situation. And it will trigger this flight, fight, or freeze response in our brain from the amygdala.
One of the things it does is it turns on that anxiety notion that tells us like, okay, there's a threat coming by and we have to actually prepare ourselves, right, for this threat to protect ourselves. So I think one of them that our sponsor teacher, Miss White, told us was so all the blood will go away from your like organs, such as like your stomach, and they will like rush to your like limbs, right? Just so like your blood's running and you're ready to run when you can. So that's kind of like the fight or the flight phase. And then freeze is when like your entire body kind of just shuts off, right? Like you're playing dead in order to avoid this situation. Like you get dizziness, you lose peripheral vision, your bladder, your mouth go dry, your hands are trembling. But I think one of the main things is, especially nowadays, we don't often encounter these type of threats, especially like from an animal or predator. So, this type of anxiety panic attacks can often come from things where we're not at a life and death situation, right? For example, like you're going in for a test or you're going for public speaking. So, and I think we tend to bring up this very big emotion, very big threat to it when it's not actually needed, right? But like every person's different as well too. So I think compared to modern day, our anxiety is derived from like very different things.
Yeah, definitely. And then like going from like the olden days when like if people had to face predators, that would trigger the 3Fs response. But then in terms of today, like a lot of people live in like places like cities where there's a lot of people and less wild animals. So the things that trigger the amygdala would probably like be like what you said, like with a test or a presentation. And then in terms of like mental health, for people, for example, with depression or anxiety, their fight, flight, or freeze response can
Mhm.
activate more frequently than
Yeah.
what other people will have throughout the thing. Or it can also they can also stay within that situation and in that sort of mindset for a longer time period than others as well. And
Yeah.
it's not a very comfortable place to be
Or
in.
yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in that like position like 24/7. I feel like I'm not too sure, but like even if you're not in sometimes it's something that triggers it too, right? And it's not something you can control. And especially if it's not something you can control, it can be like super hard. Like I
Yeah.
personally can't imagine that, right? Like because I feel like I do get panic attacks, but it's for a specific reason. Like I know, like for example, getting a blood test, I will shut off. I will I will try. It's not that I try to fight. I kind of fight and flight. I don't freeze, right? I kind of like for the blood test, right? Like I'll kind of like fight and flight, and I'll like be crying. And then in terms of panic attack, I'll actually vomit and then pass out. So I guess, yeah, so that's fun. So I think that's one of the things as well. And I think just moving on from that point into the next in terms of our physical effects. Physical effects. Yeah, I think that was one that I was kind of like, what? Like the physical effects of like anxiety in terms of like stress.
Hmm.
Right? I think that's
Yeah.
one of the things she mentioned was how you can feel tension in different parts of your body, right? And then I think when we did that mindful activity where we kind of like, you're kind of meditating and you're really looking through like each part of your body, right? You can really feel where the stress is. So I think that's something that I didn't really pay attention to before. Even when I was in the meditation, I felt like I didn't really feel it explicitly, but I feel like the more I pay attention to it, the more I'll feel it. Like I felt it in my head the most, right? And like kind of in my chest area and my like shoulders. So I think that was really cool too. But yeah, it's a bit of a tricky topic.
Yeah. And then as for things that could affect that response as well as your other biological mental health sort of aspect of it would be like your genetics, your physical health. Some people they use drugs and that could also affect their mental health biologically, their brain and their physical body. And then
Mhm.
also how people take care of themselves. Like you hear words like diet and exercise a lot. It's like a very very common words that are used, and then everybody's like you should eat healthy or you should exercise every day. But then a lot of people they don't end up actually doing any of those things, and that can definitely also take its toll on somebody's biological mental health.
No, I think just add on to that, it's like such a tricky topic as well. Like it just shows how less of awareness is put on our neurology as well. Right? I feel like we often again put a lot of emphasis on our society that we don't see how it's actually affecting our brain. Like scientifically, right? Like objectively. So and I think like yeah, and I just feel like it's been real I feel like it's been fantasized too. Even when you talk about the brain, it's been really fantasized as well. Right?
Yeah, especially in the media.
Especially in media, right? Like they kind of show it as like someone with a neurological disorder is, you know, they're out of it, right? Like it's completely, of course, it's going to be a movie for entertainment purposes and you're going to exaggerate it, right? But then you're also not sure if you're experiencing something and it's a neurological thing and you're not sure about it. You think it's just me, like it's something I'm doing,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
When it's a medical thing as well. So I think it's yeah. So yeah, it's hard to talk about too, right? And
Mhm.
again, there's not much awareness about it either.
Yeah, for like daily habits, how it affects us neurologically. For I think I got insomnia from my genes because I believe my mom has it as well. And
Yeah.
me not getting enough sleep just it affected me so much to the point where even like for studies, because I believe this happened back in elementary, and this I just pulled through until now, but I couldn't study I couldn't focus on my studies for a while, and that caused me to like really doubt myself and really lose
Oh man.
confidence because
Mhm.
I didn't get enough sleep. I honestly didn't have enough energy, and for me, not having enough energy, I didn't exercise because I don't have the energy to spend to move my body around, and I didn't get as hungry as often because I wasn't moving as around as much. And
Mhm.
I think my friends would also see me really tired and like just really looks I looked kind of dead.
Yeah,
For
Oh,
lack of a better
totally
term.
get that.
Yeah, lack of
I
a
yeah.
better term.
totally get that. I mean,
Yeah, it would affect my
I haven't been like diagnosed with insomnia or anything, but like on most nights, it'll take me like 2 or 3 hours to fall asleep, sometimes like even more. I mean, I guess you can count me sort of as lucky because I don't really get that tired. Like you said, for me, the worst point about not being able to fall asleep, instead of it being like not having enough energy throughout the day, it's
yeah.
like being like laying there in bed and then like my brain just like starts going at it, and thinking about things because I can't fall asleep. And then sometimes like
Mhm.
bad thoughts and bad memories, they like once one comes in, the rest just completely follow and just like a complete avalanche of bad things raining on me. And then that's just
Mhm.
the worst part for me about not being able to sleep because after that happens the next day, I'll be sad not because I'm tired, but because I was constantly thinking about negative things and negative ideas, and like all of that negativity just sort of like builds up in me. And because I don't really like showing if I'm upset or anything in like a really obvious way. So it's sort of hard for me to find an outlet too. And then like that's just it's like pressure.
I definitely relate to that to a spiritual level. And I think I was just looking, but like it's actually called something, right? To think about the same thing over and over again, and they tend to be sad and dark, and it's called rumination. And the habit of rumination, right, can be dangerous to your mental health, and it can prolong or intensify depression, as well as impair your ability to think and process emotions. So I think that's definitely related to what we're talking about as well. And I think in terms of like being afraid to like talk about like especially like sleep paralysis and insomnia and stuff like that, it's and ruminating. I feel like ruminating is a big thing too through a lot of people, and it's not talked about as well. And I know I had a friend who had sleep I've had sleep paralysis a couple times too, right? But it's one of those things where you're kind of just like, am I is that it, like, do I need to see a doctor, or right? Because I feel like especially like the way media portrays it, like, oh, you see demons, you see this, you see that, you're crazy, and it's just it's labeled, like everything is labeled in one specific way, and you can't, if you have this one thing, you're that person. You can't be anything else but that person. You're defined as that. So I think that's very demotivating as well.
Yeah, and it's so hard to find like reliable sources or helpful sources
Yeah,
on the internet too. Like everybody's like, you have the information, you have the world at your fingertips if you have internet access and like a phone or a laptop. But the thing is, you really don't if you're not able to find something that you can absolutely trust. Like, for example, in the media, let's just talk about movies. Like, growing up, you watch all of these movies, and some of them will talk about mental health and mental health disorders or illnesses. And then, like you said, they'll label it in such a way where it's like if you have even like slightly the same symptoms, you'll automatically think that maybe I am crazy. Maybe that's me. But in reality, you're not. But then I also feel like the good thing, like the good side of having like all this media and stuff is that there are some resources that do talk about mental health in like a very um in
sure.
a yeah, in a mature way, in a respectful way. Yeah, and it's like an accurate depiction, like for example some books where like there are some good I don't know, like Instagram pages or Facebook pages, but it's just the problem is that it's very hard to find them, and it's also harder to find like these
People.
tips to help you with your mental health. Like you see things like regular exercise and healthy diet, but the thing is you have to tailor that to your own needs, and it's harder to do that.
Definitely. All right. So people are always fighting their own battles on the inside, and at times they don't have the strength or the courage to explicitly tell someone. Be patient. Do not pass immediate judgment onto a person. Don't label them. You never know what's running behind the scenes to be fully confident and have the right to judge or thoughtlessly comment on another person's behavior or situation. So let's be kind, and yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of our podcast. Stigma Busters out.